Greetings, my sleepy friends. It is I, Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. Gonna have a beer. Hopefully it won't get all too foamy. Oh my, I should have been prepared for that. But luckily it didn't foam over. This is Sleepy Vlog number 95, which is really a small number of Sleepy Vlogs, given that I am now in my 12th year on YouTube. I passed my 11th anniversary back in April and forgot to even note it. But here is my current favorite beer for the summer, Flamingo Planet. The camera doesn't want to focus on it up close. Guava Blonde Ale. And during the summer, I do like an ale with a little bit of a taste of fruit to it. There used to be this really great apricot ale that I would have during the summer, so I'm not sure if they still make that. So today I wanted to talk about the Comic Book Community Awards. The nominations are almost closed. I'm hoping a few of you will get a chance to do some nominating before it completely closes. If you see this video soon enough, I will be nominating this evening. And then I wanted to talk about a gift I got, some completing my Savage Sword of Conan run, all 235 issues, and a few other odds and ends. So for the Comic Book Community Award, the biggest thing I wanted to do, and I wish I had done this a lot earlier, I meant to, was recommend someone for the Lifetime Achievement Award, the Stan Lee Award. And that person is...
Greetings, everybody, and a fine how do you do. There were a couple of spots on my sweet cheeks over here. I was just trying to clean it off. Anyway,
Captain Strangelife, Hans. Hans started his YouTube comic book channel in November of 2009, and he has done so many fantastic videos. He is one of the greatest collectors. Oh, my camera just rebelled. He's one of the greatest collectors that I know of. I've learned so much about comic book history from his videos, how to take care of comics, and they're just fun and interesting. And another thing is, when I first got on YouTube and started to get to know people, I often heard people say that when they first started making YouTube videos and they didn't know there was a community out there, Hans, Captain Strangelife, would reach out to them. And so I kind of think of him as someone who maybe was one of the first people who had an idea that there was a community out here and started making those connections. And so this is why I think he would make the very best person to give the Lifetime Achievement Award to the comic book community. I consider him one of the key founders of the comic book community, and I stand by that strongly. And I remember when he first left a nice comment on one of my early videos. I felt like, wow, I've really made it. The people who are important, or not important, people who are really members of the community now know who I am. And I felt like I was part of the community once Hans was in there. And he commented on my videos quite regularly, even though I think a lot of them maybe weren't in his, particular areas of interest. I'm not sure. His areas of interest are very wide. But anyway, great member of the community. He's still making videos, and as happens to so many of us who at one point might have been central to what seemed like the comic book community, I think now he's a little bit on the side. There's certainly still a lot of people who know who he is, but I think there's a lot of people who don't, or don't regularly watch his videos anymore because we kind of took him for granted. And I think, when I first heard about the Comic Book Community Awards, I was a little less than excited by it. But I think the great thing about it is the comic community is now so many different things to so many different people, the YouTube comic book community, and it spreads out into Instagram, and it used to, for me, spread out into Twitter, and other Facebook. I think has a lot of people who kind of connect there and then end up connected to the YouTube thing too. Anyway, it's so big that I think having these awards helps reconnect people, bring the different strands together a little bit. When I look over the all the categories, a lot of them don't seem to me what I personally think of as the core important things in the comic book community, but some of them do. So several months ago, I started to make this video where I would go over each category that I was able to vote in and show everybody that I was thinking about voting for that category as a way to, just promote or spread the love to a lot of channels. Unfortunately, after I did it for a category or two, I realized the amount of editing and the amount of effort here and organization was beyond me, and I procrastinated, and I thought I've got to think of a simpler way to do it. And now the deadline is almost here. So I am showing you a little bit of the video or the slideshow that I made when I started to try to do that. So there's certain categories that I really care about, and ones I wish that were there. Maybe I don't think there's a best comedic category, or maybe there is. I have to double check. Just best late night hangout or best live YouTube hangout. There's a lot of live shows that I'd love to be able to nominate, and I don't know if I can fit them all into the different categories. But anyway, the important point is, so this camera, which is the most expensive computer camcorder I could find, is at times really great and other times just really annoying. It has AI, and it makes up, anyway, it does things. So if it starts moving around, it's because the AI has woken up again and decided I want it to do some thinking for me, even though I don't. If only the AI could just respond to my voice. I think maybe it responds to certain hand signals, and I may have turned it on with hand signals. And that is pretty smart, I guess, for a camera. So anyway, it's a thing, the Comic Book Community Awards. I say go there, nominate in a few categories that make sense to you, and don't worry about the rest. And then we'll have lots of nominees to look at more closely and do our voting later on in the year. And a big cheers to Brian LCS, who is the major force in making all this work, although a number of other people are in on it too. So all of them, I appreciate that you put so much effort into this. So onward, last week was my birthday, and on the same day was Travis's birthday, Comics with Bueller. And we got together for coffee with the comic book crew, the original comic book crew, I guess we are. There's layers now, maybe. But the old fogies who still get together when we can. And Travis brought me a present, just something I guess he had laying around, or his family had laying around, that he thought I would like, and he was extremely right. And I guess hopefully there's no one in his family who wishes they could have kept this. But it is the Los Angeles Times, the front section anyway, of the Los Angeles Times, for 3 days in August of 1945, as Tokyo was preparing, as Japan surrendered and ended World War II. These are in pretty good shape for how old they are. They're a lot older than me, and I'm 62. I haven't done the math. I can't do it in my head when the camera's pointing at me. But it kind of, reading about this makes me realize ending a big war like this, it's not like you just sign a truce and it's over. It's a process. Surrender note on the way, Tokyo Radio announced. But there's still like bits and pieces of fighting going on, even as they're trying to get this surrender in gear. see. So that was the August 13th, the first one. This is August 14th. And here's an old ad. That's kind of fun. Competition is keen. No one uses the word keen anymore now, but it wasn't an embarrassing thing back then, unless this was ironic, but I don't think it was. Yanks rebuilding airport for Paris. Zionists renew Palestine plea. Pensioners' war bond buying brings inquiry. VJ Day to add to Red Cross jobs. So VJ Day would be Victory over Japan Day, I guess. There was VE Day, Victory over Europe. And then on Wednesday, August 15th, they announced their victory, peace. Japs accept Allied terms. Truman names MacArthur to receive formal surrender. So very cool. And I have not studied World War II enough. I did not realize that some of the Japanese leaders committed suicide. It says first Jap leader. It's not the first suicide. World of Peace brings bedlam in Los Angeles. Victory in the future. Indianapolis sunk with 883 killed. So there was a torpedo attack even while surrender was being negotiated. Jap planes attempt attack on fleet hour after proclamation of peace. Truman acts to swing nation into peace path. Yeah, so it was a very intense time in history, I think. You know, we think we live in the most intense times, but I think that was a much more intense time. But so that was a really great grift, and I really appreciate it. Tip of the hat, tip of the Bueller hat to Comics with Bueller, to Travis. It's great whenever he comes back into town, and we'll have more good times ahead. So my daughter had been going to this art camp, this half-day class for a week at a place called Hipbone Studio. And it was a really cool animation class with an animator who had worked on all kinds of big animated series, including The Incredibles. And he now works for, I forget the name of the studio that used to be the Will Vinton studio here in Portland. And I guess he had some downtime, so they convinced him at Hipbone to teach this week-long class for teenagers, which I think was really amazing. He brought in a friend who is a cinematographer on the Moon Knight show, brought in some comic book artists, all in this little cheap summer class for kids. But in the same building with Hipbone is what's it called? Future Dreams, a comic book shop that's down in the basement of this building. And I always was jealous when I would see Jared Osborne show comic shop news that he would pick up every week. When he does his weekly haul, he would show comic shop news. And none of my stores carried comic shop news. I always thought that was strange. But Future Dreams does. But they have hundreds of copies that no one has picked up. And they're in boxes out in front in the entryway of the building. So every day when I picked up my daughter, I picked up one more comic shop news. This must be fairly old, the Frankenstein one. And I think it changed hands. I think I heard Jared say it was... But so I don't know, do the comic shops have to pay for this? Because if they do, Future Dreams is paying for a lot of stuff that no one wants or no one takes. Or maybe they get them free and other comic shops in my area don't want them. So and I'm not, maybe they're aimed, are the previews in here for the comic shop owners more? Are they aimed at the comic book shop owners, or are they aimed at the comic book readers, or maybe both? I also wonder if people have to pay to have their comics previewed in here. It's free to us, so I would certainly like it if my shops got the comic shop news. Is this a more recent one? This is from April of this year. That's a cool flash picture. Yeah, so I'm just puzzled why they don't get it. But I guess if I ever want it, I can just go over to Future Dreams. It's just not one of my regular shops. It's a place where I go for the occasional hunt into the depths because it's a pretty crazy shop. And this issue, I was shocked. This is the spring 2023. I was shocked that it had a Jim Woodring cover. That's pretty obscure stuff. I mean, I love Jim Woodring, but I don't know how many people know who he is. He's kind of a superstar in a small little pond somewhere on the periphery of the comic book world. But so anyway, I just thought it was funny. I almost, if I could iron this out, make this into a poster. I love Jim Woodring's art. It's so, I don't know, so super visually appealing. They even have a picture of Captain Carrot here. Is DC bringing him back at all, or did they just put it there for fun? Anyway, so also in comic book collecting news, for the past 3 months or so, I've been very intensely focused on picking up as many Savage Sword of Conans as I could. And I started to get really close to having them all. But there's a cluster of them near the end of the run that cost a lot of money. And I finally found them and I'd been looking at them online at these outrageous prices. And I finally found them in a variety of local shops, but in particular at Floating World, which is not a mainstream shop. It usually sells things like Jim Woodring. But they had this box of Savage Swords of Conan that they're trying to get rid of. So they knew that the last few issues were more expensive, and the prices were much higher than I normally pay for Savage Sword of Conan, but they were a lot less than the prices I was seeing online. I'm a little unsure about, what the real price should be on things. But anyway, here's some of the later ones last ones that I purchased. I showed a few others on Metarog and Naman's channels. But these are some that I didn't show before. This is Conan 111. So I had these holes through. I had one through 100, and then I had a scattering of ones in the hundreds, and I slowly was filling in holes. So this was one of the last ones, as was 166. And then I got stumped because this one, 192, online people were selling for $30, $40, $60, $100. And as far as I can tell, the only reason this one is more expensive than the others around the same era is that people think this cover with a giant shark is really cool. That's the only reason. But for some reason, it's hard to get. But it was kind of one of the last things that fell into place for me. I found it at another comic book shop at a $5 price point or something. So I grabbed it right away, and that solved that problem. So it makes me wonder if there's some people are just paying way too much for this, and that there's plenty of copies out there, and eventually you can find someone selling it for a reasonable price. I haven't read this story, but I did look through it, and it looks like Conan gets swallowed by a shark and cuts his way out of the stomach, which I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, doesn't the shark chew on you a bit before you go through? Anyway. And then this, I love this cover, and it turns out this cover's by George Pratt. That name really rings a bell, George Pratt, but I can't remember from where. But I don't know. I love a kind of sketchier look. I like that this is more impressionistic, so to speak. Not every detail just photographically painted out. So that's definitely a favorite cover of mine. I'm not sure what Conan's doing. Is he like chopping through a lake full of skulls or bones? And this 226, I can't remember if this was one of the ones I had to pay more for, but that's kind of a cool cover, more concrete than the George Pratt cover. 227, that's a nice cover too. It's almost like just before Savage Sword of Conan ceased to exist, it got really good again. The covers are really good. All the scripts are by Roy Thomas, and most of the art is really fantastic too. Um, so I don't recall exactly which issue Roy Thomas came back on, but that originally, finding out that Roy Thomas had come back to writing Savage Sword of Conan after leaving, I think after maybe issue 60 or so, and then I think he returns in the late 190s or maybe around 200. Anyway, so I decided that I wanted to get all the Roy Thomas, and then I just couldn't resist filling the rest in because when I picked up random issues, sometimes I would find some art that I really liked by Val Mayrick or Rudy Nebres or someone like that. So I just had to keep going. Issue 230. So I think this is. I don't know. I don't think I paid too much for that. I think starting with issue 231, I paid the higher prices, but still on the lower side of what I would have been able to find on the internet, and I was able to buy it from a local store that I would like to support anyway. That's quite a cover. Conan has a very big chin there, but anyway, that's very cool. It's almost Richard Corbin-esque, but it's not a Richard Corbin cover. I'm not going to open this one now. All of these last ones have pretty cool covers. The whole thing of Conan holding his arms out wide seems to come originally from a Frazetta cover. Because it's funny, this is 232. 233 also has Conan holding his arms out wide. So I think I paid a pretty healthy price for these. Oh, this is another one that looks quite cool. It's a little harder to see. Yeah, it's kind of Richard Corbin-esque also. I don't think it is Corbin just from the proportions of everybody. And then oddly, the final issue, and the one that is really expensive. I'll tell you, I paid $50 for this. And maybe now people will tell me about how cheaply they got it. But I was seeing people online wanting $100, $150, even more for this. So when I saw it for $50, I just grabbed it. It's in very nice shape. But it's odd because it doesn't have a painted cover. Maybe maybe there was some rush. Maybe they weren't planning to put out this issue right away. They hadn't already booked a cover for it, so they had someone quickly draw it. It looks, at least the inking looks by Rudy Nebres. I don't know if it's drawn entirely by him. I'll look inside. Rage of the Goblins. I don't know, goblins and Conan, I guess anything in Conan, right? So, let's see. Who gets the credit here? Rudy Nebres cover art, so it's all Rudy Nebres, with Pablo Marcos doing the coloring. So two stalwarts of the Savage Sword of Conan working on that cover there. I don't know what I think about it. Would I have liked Conan, Savage Sword of Conan as much if it always had drawn covers? There's a nice back cover there. I guess instead of the frontispiece, as they used to always have. There is sort of a frontispiece, just an illustration to go along with the credits in this case, rather than a whole thing. Todd Grindberg drew that. Does he now draw Prince Valiant, or no? That's someone else. And it looks like it's penciling and inking by John Buscema on the inside. Although I think John Buscema's inking style goes better with a color comic. It's still, anytime I get to see him inking his own Conan work, is kind of exciting. Is there any other stories in here? Yeah, it looks like different art there. It's pretty wild looking art. Let me see. Mike Doherty, who sometimes his art looks really cool and other times it seems just really hasty. But this is another Conan tale, the Blood of Beasts. So there's Mike Doherty's art. So anyway, there's something for me really compelling about trying to get the whole run of a comic. And 235 issues, that's a lot. So I originally was more realistic about getting 100. But I just couldn't. It just was very satisfying. In fact, after I completed this, I I didn't feel that itch to go out and buy comics so much. But eventually I did, because there's there's a comic book 3 or 4 blocks away from my house, and I walk by it all the time. A comic book store, Excalibur. So, and then of course other stores very nearby. But that's a tale for another video. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me. If it's not too late, go nominate Captain Strangelife for the Lifetime Achievement Award, the Stan Lee Award. I think if anyone is the Stan Lee of the comics book community, it is Captain Strangelife. So until next time, cheers everyone.